Welcome to H2K Infosys. H2K Infosys is a e-verify business based in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. We provide 100% job-oriented, instructor-led, face-to-face, true live online software training programs. It also includes access to cloud test lab with software tools. We provide live project for you to work on. We also provide assistance with mock interviews, resume preparation and review, and job placement assistance. H2K Infosys is trusted by so many students across the world. H2K Infosys provides world-class services in IT training with real-time project work for corporates and individuals, special IT training for MS students in the United States, software design, development, QA manual and automation, performance testing and maintenance, IT staff augmentation, job placement assistance, and tech support.
Hello, are you able to hear me? Okay. Okay. Manoj, are you able to hear me? Okay, folks, any doubts before we start the class? Do you have any doubts? Anyone of you have any doubts before we start the class? Any doubts?
Hello.
Yes.
Hey, Neha, this is Balaja here.
Hi.
Hi. I had recently joined your class last week. So can you please add me in your email list, and can you please send me some document?
Okay. Yeah. Please paste your email on the chat. After the class, I'll send you, the materials as well as the projects that we did, the code that we did, code, Java, JDBC, and everything. So please put your email on the chat. Okay?
Okay.
I'll take care.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Folks, any other doubts? So, folks, today we'll be discussing about JUnit. So, any idea on what is JUnit? So, when I ask them questions, you could tell it to the extent that you know. There is nothing harm, if you say something wrong, right? So, as we're like halfway through the classes, it makes better for all of us when it's more interactive, right? So, even though you don't know the exact thing, like if you have a vague idea or, you can just tell it what's the purpose of it, or, to the extent you know about it. So, folks, what is the purpose of a JUnit?
I think JUnit is used for some testing purpose, right?
Yes. JUnit
is used for unit testing, I think.
Yes. So, JUnit is unit testing, is used for doing unit testing in Java. So, we write some Java code to test it. So, why do we have this unit testing? The idea behind those JUnits is like, first, it's not we test it first, we write the test cases first. So, nowadays in the market, we talk about test-driven development, right? So, what is test-driven development? Like every time, when you go to your project or for the interview, that's about what test-driven development, right? What is test-driven development? from the requirements, we write the test cases first and then write the code adhering to those test cases. So we write code so that all the test cases that we have written should pass. From the requirements, we write the test cases first and then write code so that it passes all those test cases. Basically, it covers all the test cases.
When you
Right?
say test cases, what does that mean exactly?
See, a test case, let's say I'm doing a login application. Let's say I just have a page where the user can log in. We did the servlet, right, Rahul? Remember? So there are some, in that requirement, different cases can be, you don't want the user ID to be null, or you don't want the password to be null. Both should not be null. And if I pass in user ID and password and call the method, right? If the user exists in the database, it should return, login is successful, right? That's a test case. So it's a unit, it's a unit functionality. It's a different cases that we could derive from the requirements. That's test case. You understand?
Okay, you basically find the fault lines, like wherever you tend to have certain issues where people might enter the wrong.
It's not about the issues, testing the functionality actually. It's not about only the wrong data.
Yeah.
Sorry?
How good the functionality works? Functionality, how efficient is it when it comes to testing in different ways? That is what it is, right? Yeah.
Yes, see, testing different scenarios.
Yeah.
In this case, it's like different scenarios. And when you have a functionality, there will be different scenarios from which that should function properly, right?
Yes.
So it's a set of conditions or variables under which, we test something actually.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Hope everyone understand what's the test case, right? So the JUnit is an open source framework which is used, for writing the test and running the test. So it has, in JUnit 4, we have the annotations and we have some assertions to test the expected result, right? So if, let's say, we're expecting a result as true or false, we're expecting two different values to be equal, right? So as part of JUnit, what are the features as part of JUnit is you can use it for writing and running tests. It provides annotations to, identify the test method. So we have different annotations, which we're going to discuss. So those different annotations identify which are the test methods, what needs to be executed or, needs to be done before the execution of test, after the execution of test, and all these things. We can provide annotations to identify. And we have different assertions to test the expected results. So what is testing? The result should match the actual result and the expected result should match, right? That's what we say a test case is successful or a test case is passed or the functionality is fine, right? So we have the assertions to test the expected result and we have test runners for running the test, and with JUnit we can write code. It's not about writing code faster. We can write the JUnit and whenever we want to tweak some code, right? So make changes to the code. Instead of manual testing, we can run these test cases so that the quality gets increased. JUnit is simple and it takes less time to write. It's not very difficult to write the JUnit, and the JUnit test can be run automatically. We can configure, we can just put it in a main method and trigger it or configure it, or we can make a suite. If I have different JUnit classes, right? I can make it as a suite and I can run that suite also. So these JUnits can be organized into test suites, which has different test cases. And when we run it, we have a bar which says, how many test cases are passed and how many test cases are failed. So we were discussing about different annotations that's part of the JUnit test, right? So the annotation test, right? The methods which actually test the functionality. right? The test annotation identifies a method as a test method. So in a method, if I'm trying to test something, that is annotated as @test. So if a test method, in a method, if you are expecting to throw an exception, folks, it's a very important interview question also. So how do we check if a method is throwing exception? So if I want to write a test case to check for a method to throw exception, right? So we use expected is equal to exception.class. So if the test method is not throwing any exception, it fails. So we are saying this method is expected to throw an exception, and it will give us error, or it says the test case is failed if the method is not throwing any exception. And we have the timeout that we could specify. If a test method is taking more than specific milliseconds, let's say in this case, if it's taking longer than 100 milliseconds, the test, that specific method fails. And we have the before, @before. So what is the code that goes in a before method? The before method gets executed before each step for actually executing a test case, right? So if you're testing a method in a test case, right? So we need to populate the data that we have to pass to the method that we are trying to test, right? So, some kind of a input data or the class initialization, or it basically prepares the test environment. So this method, the methods which are annotated with @before, they get executed before each test. And we have @after annotation. This method gets executed after each test. So for the cleanup of the environment, like, deleting the data, or like the temporary cleaning up of the memory, and if you have any data structure, or we try to close or clear all these things in the after method. So we have before class and after class annotation. So folks, what is the difference? Any one of you, what is the difference between before and before class? Before method, the method which is annotated with @before, it gets executed before each test. Let's say in a class, I have, let's say, 10 test methods, right? So @before method gets executed before each test method. So it gets executed 10 times. But @before class, it gets executed only once before the start of all test cases, all test methods basically. It is used like, if you want to get a connection with a database or such kind of things. Because they are used in all the test cases, so we don't want to clear it and then get a connection object for each test case. So we put it in a before class method so that gets executed only once before the start of all tests. And this is made as static. When you're working with JUnit, this method is made as static. And same with after class, this method gets executed once after the execution of all the test methods. Let's say whatever, is those kind of thing we do in a before class, it makes more sense to clean it up, like, closing the database connection, and, in after class methods. And we have ignore annotation, which is used to ignore a test method, right? Let's say, we have written a test case, let's say we are modifying the code, right? So, but we haven't modified the test case to include it, right? So for time being, we can just keep it as ignore, so that it ignores that specific test method. So folks, before we see some code, do you have any doubts on this annotation that we have discussed test before?
So Neha, quick question. So why we use like before? What is the purpose for running this particular test or the annotation before creating or executing the class or before running or executing a method?
Actually, if we are writing a test case, right, we are testing something, right? So that method has some input,
right?
Right? That we want to test, isn't it? So let's say I'm testing a method. I want to test a method.
Okay.
Right? So if the method is taking some parameters, we should pass that specific data to the method, right?
Right.
So how does the method get the data? Right? That data population initialization is done in the before method. Understand?
Okay.
It's basically it's setting up the environment, right? If the data is needed for the execution of it. So we do that as part of the before method.
Okay. So it's kind of basically checking all the connections and
yeah, if you want to, let's say if you want to do an insert and set, let's say if it's getting inserted in the database, right? So you need to have some data to call the insert method. Let's say I'm just giving you have a DAO method to save the data, right? So if you want to save the data, we need to provide the data to you, right? So that data creation and everything will be part of the before method, because that data is needed for that specific for a specific test execution, right?
Okay.
Does it make sense for you?
Yeah. So do we have like in this, I don't know, we use the Eclipse or whatever, do we specify somewhere whatever the data, like the input parameter or everything before running this, creating this method?
Yes. See, whatever the information that is needed, we just, we provide it. Whatever the data that is needed for running the test method, we have to create all the data.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay. So others, everyone, any doubts in this conversation? The testing, yes. You're clear? That is clear?
Yes. One doubt. So what is this test expected exception dot class?
We are expecting that method to throw an exception. So we have created some data and expecting the method to throw exception. So it tests if an exception is thrown during the method execution.
Okay. And before a method, we can have like multiple annotations in front of it, right? Like a comma separated, or I don't know how to do multiple annotations.
Okay, we don't want to make the same method as before and test. We don't do that, right?
No, okay. But
yeah, and test, we can have ignore and test. Just one after the other, we can have ignore and test. It's a test method, but for now we are asking it, we want to ignore it, such as, right? So we specify both those annotations.
Okay.
See, there are multiple annotations, we just, yes, you're right. So I just commented, we just have it like this. It's a two annotations, you see? Is that what your question or what's your question?
Yeah, that was my question, and the first one was regarding that expected equal to exception dot class.
Okay, so when we specify this, what is the expected result from this method? We are expecting this method to throw an exception.
Okay.
That's like like how do we test if a method is throwing an exception with specific data, right? We use this expected is equal to exception dot class.
Okay, got it.
In the actual scenario, we create a random method here and we'll call the actual method from inside this method, right?
See, we create test methods, right? What are the methods we annotated with @test or annotate method, and we call the real method, like the code that we write, right? When you say some code, I mean, it has some methods in it, right? So we call them actual methods, which performs the functionality from the test method.
Okay, so while calling the method, we have to pass the parameters in the calling function as well as using the tag, I mean annotation.
Yes.
Both the things have to be done?
No. Could you repeat your question?
Like, say for example, I'm calling a method test from setup 1. The first method you have shown here.
We don't call a method from setup 1. It's setting of the data. We don't like call any methods like test method. I mean, if you want to test it, that method call is not part of setup 1. You can call the method from setup 1, setup or before annotation, right? Annotated methods, you initialize some kind of data that needs. You don't call a method to test that method, right? So let's say if you have a method insert employee, right? Okay. If you want to test it, we call it in the method which is annotated with @test, not @before.
Yeah. Okay. So
if you want to insert that employee, right? So we populate the employee object in the setup method.
Oh, okay.
Is that clear?
This is second. Let me think about it.
Sorry?
Okay. So we just,
let's say here we have this Hibernate, right? Right. See, here, let's say I have a here we just have this. See, here we want to insert it, right? So we are calling this session.save, right? Before that, we need this employee object, right?
yeah.
So if we are saving the save method, we need this employee object. This employee object creation and populating this one will be part of the @before method. See, here, right, I want to see if the method in the hello IMPL class is hello, right? So I want a message to set it, to test it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm doing as part of this. In the setup, I'm setting a message to it. In my actual test method, I'm calling the method, getting the value that it returns, and I'm trying to, because I'm expecting it to return hello. That's the actual test that I'm doing it here. Because when I call this method, as I've set some value, it has to be equal to hello, right? That is what I'm performing here. So if they're not equal, the test is going to fail.
Okay. So it is a mandatory rule that everything has to be, I mean, the initialization or the assigning of this employee object has to be inside a method.
Yes, see, not like the employee object, whatever the data or that's needed for the test execution. Let's say if I have so many test cases here, right? Test methods here, right? I have so many methods which are annotated with tests. So all the data that is needed for the execution of those test methods, we put it as part of setup.
Okay, so
that get executed.
Normally, we don't assign anything inside the test method. Like, say for example, can we create the employee object inside the hello IMPL itself?
Yes. See, here I just don't have this, right? I'm doing this. So the setup that's happening here, maybe I think you will be more clear if I don't have the object. So we're creating the object and we're setting, whatever needed, because we need an object and the proper message should be set for the execution of this test. So we are doing in the @before method, in the before method, right? So let's say we are testing a DAO class. DAO class is basically where it interacts with the database and all, right? So at that moment, we have to have the database connection object for all the test method execution, right?
Yeah.
So when we say @before, this gets executed before each method run. So folks, here I gave it without saying setting up environment 1, right? So if you see if I just run it as a test case, how do we run test cases from Eclipse, folks? You can just right click, run as JUnit test, right? So if you see the console, right, the method annotated with @before, it gets executed before all the test cases. Before each test case run. But when we specify it as @ before class, that gets executed only once. That is the difference between before and before class. So, I mean, the setting of the data is what we keep it in the, I mean,
Yeah.
the data, yes?
Yeah, in this case, like how you, like for example, the DB object is going to take the DB is connected there. So how will you pass on the DB object in this, before to check whether DB connection is there or not?
See, it matters what exactly you want to test. You want to test the getting of the connection object, or you want to test some inserts or different stuff. I mean, we write test methods depending on what we want to test, Pradeep. Right? If you have a method get connection that you have tried using, loading the driver, I mean, getting the connection object. So you get the test, you call the method get connection and you say assert null of connection. So when you get the connection object, it should not be null, right? So in that test method, you say assert null to check if, if the get connection or if the connection object that you got is null. That will be a test case to check, to check the connection object. That's a different test case. But if you want to test, like the insertion is happening fine, save or delete, like the DAO methods you have, that will be a different test case. Wherein getting the connection object will be part of the setup. You understand, Pradeep?
But like I mean, where we if any object we need to check or any the connection we need to check. So in the Jane case, we just doing that.
See, if you want to check for any object, we use assert null. That is what I'm trying to say. It depends on what you want to test, right?
No, my question is like I mean, how will you pass like we told assert null, and then will we passing on the message it's there or not like that it will be that flow or like.
I mean, I can. Your voice is not clear. Could you please be a little bit loud and repeat your question, please?
Yeah.
Hello?
Question number one, where will be putting that Azure is sitting now? Second question is that like,
where will we? Could you please type, Pratik? I'm very sorry. Could you please type? Or
And Neha, this is Joseph.
hi.
Yeah, I think I just want to make sure that my understanding is enough for me to proceed with the conversation you're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, the JUnit test cases are written basically as a part of the TDD development. So it's basically
It's not just for TDD development. Some people write it as software development also, just to make sure that they, when they make some changes to the code, the basic functionality, they're not breaking anything, right?
Correct, but I understood that this could be any testing. Is not the nomenclature doesn't not necessarily should be TDD. It could be anything else, but general testing purpose. Okay.
Yes, it could be used for any purpose, but it's more, when we talk about JUnit, it makes more sense for us to talk about test-driven development. But
okay.
A JUnit can exist even when you're not following a test-driven development approach.
Correct. Outside of test-driven development. Okay, this is basically general testing framework. One of the questions I have is that actually the intention of this one is to test all the class methods. Methods in a class which generally will not be tested otherwise a UI component, the UI-driven testing approach. So we make sure that every single method which is written for a purpose or a combination of the methods which is written for a purpose will have a test method to drive the testing of that individually, so that we can make sure that the results coming out of that will be adequate enough to say that this method works when we implement the right classes when we plug this one into user interface or a web service or whatever the backend or front end it should be. So that is the higher level of understanding. What we are trying to basically say here is what type of testing we can do and what kind of annotations and method-driven approach which you can use to test it. And that's the way I understood this.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's a good.
What you said completely makes sense.
Okay, so let's go into the next level of it. So, okay, I just want to make sure that one more level of understanding is there. I'm getting lost in some of the conversations here. The second level of understanding I have is that, okay, there are a lot of annotations which is given basically to run certain functionalities. It could be before a class is run, before a method is run. So it's basically help you to build a text environment. Basically, entry point is the test environment.
So many of our students have given testimonials on how our training programs are. You will find them on kudzu.com and on our website H2KInfosys.com. On our website H2KInfosys.com, you will also find more detailed information on who we are, the courses that we offer, what each course covers. Also, if you're interested in a demo program, please register on our homepage on the left-hand side. Just give us more information about yourself and we will send you a link for a demo class. The demo class is absolutely free. Experience our commitment by just attending an orientation workshop at no cost. Our team of faculty and advisors are here to guide you with the right information. If you still have more questions, please feel free to call us. Call us at 770-777-1269. This is a United States number. If you're calling from the UK, call us at 020-337-17615. You can also email us at training@h2kinfosys.com or h2kinfosys@gmail.com. Thank you for watching our videos. We wish you a great career in information technology.